The morning light spilled through the stained-glass windows of the Habsburg Winter Palace, casting jewel-toned shadows across the polished marble floors. Katarina Ellis moved silently through the grand corridor, her footsteps muffled by the soft soles of her servants' shoes. She balanced a silver tray of fresh linens, keeping her gaze lowered as she passed members of the imperial court in their finery. In the 5 months since she'd joined the palace staff, she perfected the art of invisibility. Vienna in 1887 was a city of contradictions, opulent ballrooms and squalid tenements, scientific advancement and ancient traditions. For Katarina, daughter of an English governess and a Hungarian clerk, the imperial court was both salvation and prison. At 19, with no dowry and few prospects after her parents' deaths, service in Emperor Franz Joseph's household had been an unexpected blessing. She turned down the east wing, where the private quarters of the royal family lay. The corridor was quieter here, the guard standing at attention every 20 paces. Katarina nodded respectfully as she passed them, making her way toward the Crown Prince's apartments. Crown Prince Stefan Montefiore was not of Habsburg blood, not fully. His mother, Archduchess Sophia, had married Prince Alessandro Montefiore of the minor Italian nobility, causing a scandal that had only been quieted when the emperor himself blessed the union. The Crown Prince had been educated in Vienna and Paris, his intellect and diplomatic skill making him a valuable asset to the empire despite whispers about his mixed heritage. Katarina had glimpsed him only a handful of times, at a distance during formal processions or through doorways as he conferred with ministers. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the intense blue eyes of his Habsburg mother. As she approached his antechamber, she heard raised voices. She slowed her steps, uncertain whether to proceed. "You will fulfill your obligations to the empire, Stefan," came the emperor's voice, unusually harsh. "The alliance with Bavaria depends upon it." "Uncle, I have dedicated my life to serving Austria-Hungary," replied a deeper voice, the Crown Prince. "But to marry Princess Magdalena when there is no love." The emperor's laugh was brittle. "You are not a poet or a peasant to indulge in such luxuries. You are my sister's son and my heir. Your duty is to the crown." Katarina froze. Palace servants knew better than to eavesdrop on the imperial family, but her feet seemed rooted to the floor. "The announcement will be made at the spring ball," the emperor continued. "I expect you to play your part convincingly." Heavy footsteps approached the door. Katarina rushed forward, pretending she had just arrived. The door swung open, and Emperor Franz Joseph emerged, his famous whiskers quivering with suppressed anger. He barely glanced at Katarina as she pressed herself against the wall in a deep curtsy. When the emperor's footsteps had faded, Katarina approached the antechamber door, which had been left ajar. She knocked softly. When no answer came, she pushed the door open a fraction. "Your Highness? I've brought fresh linens." The antechamber was empty, but the door to the prince's private study stood open. Through it, Katarina caught a glimpse of movement. Protocol dictated that she should retreat and return later, but something, perhaps the harsh words she'd overheard, compelled her forward. The study was a handsome room lined with books and maps. Crown Prince Stefan stood at the window, his back to the door. His shoulders shook slightly, and one hand was pressed against the glass. Katarina knew she should leave immediately, but as she began to back away, her elbow knocked against a small bronze statue. The prince turned swiftly at the noise, and Katarina saw what no servant was ever meant to see, tears on the face of the Habsburg heir. For a moment, they stared at each other in mutual shock. The prince's blue eyes widened, then narrowed. He straightened to his full height, imperious despite the dampness on his cheeks. "How long have you been standing there?" His voice was controlled, but she could hear the tension beneath. Katarina dropped into a deep curtsy. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I came with the linens and found the door open. I should not have entered without permission." She kept her eyes lowered, heart pounding. Servants had been dismissed for far less serious breaches of etiquette. "Look at me," he commanded. Slowly, she raised her gaze. The Crown Prince had composed himself, though his eyes remained reddened. He studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Your name?" Katarina Ellis, Your Highness. Ellis? His brow furrowed. Not a local name. My father was English, sir. My mother Hungarian. He approached her, and she fought the urge to step back. You speak German like a native. Thank you, Your Highness. I was raised here in Vienna. He circled her slowly, and Katarina felt her cheeks warm under his scrutiny. When he faced her again, his expression had hardened. What you witnessed will not be repeated to anyone. Do you understand? Of course, Your Highness. I would never, nevertheless, he interrupted, I cannot risk gossip. The Crown Prince, weeping like a schoolboy. His laugh was bitter. How the court would delight in such a tale. Fear tightened Katarina's throat. Your Highness, I swear on my parents' graves, I will speak of this to no one. Something in her voice must have convinced him, for his expression softened slightly. Very well, Miss Ellis. See that you don't. He turned away, dismissing her. You may leave the linens and go. Katarina curtsied again and backed toward the door, relief washing over her. As she reached the threshold, his voice stopped her. Miss Ellis. Yes, Your Highness. What would you do if you were forced to marry someone you'd never met, for the good of an empire you did not choose to serve? The question hung in the air between them. Katarina knew the correct answer, duty above all else, but the vulnerability in his eyes compelled her honesty. I believe, sir, that empires are made of people. And people cannot serve well what they resent. His eyebrows rose. For a moment, Katarina feared she'd overstepped, but then the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. An interesting perspective from a palace maid. He gestured toward the door. You may go. Katarina curtsied one final time and fled, certain she had just experienced both the most terrifying and strangest encounter of her life. 3 days passed, and Katarina avoided the East Wing entirely, volunteering instead for the grueling work of cleaning the grand ballroom in preparation for the spring ball. On the 4th day, however, the housekeeper summoned her. You're to report to the Crown Prince's quarters immediately, the older woman said, her expression severe. What have you done, girl? Nothing, Mrs. Berger, Katarina insisted, though her stomach churned with apprehension. See that it stays that way. The last thing we need is another scandal with the maids. Katarina hurried to the East Wing, her mind racing. Had the prince decided to dismiss her after all? Would she be sent away without a reference, unable to find decent employment elsewhere? To her surprise, she was led not to the antechamber but to the prince's private library. He sat at a massive desk, writing in a leather-bound journal. When she entered, he looked up, his expression unreadable. Miss Ellis. Thank you for coming. She curtsied. Your Highness. He gestured to a chair opposite his desk, an unheard-of liberty for a servant. When she hesitated, he smiled slightly. Please, sit. This conversation requires privacy and comfort. Tentatively, she perched on the edge of the chair. The prince closed his journal and leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. I've been reflecting on our conversation, he said. About empires and resentment. Katarina swallowed. I spoke out of turn, Your Highness. I apologize. He waved a dismissive hand. On the contrary. You spoke with refreshing candor. He paused, studying her. Tell me, Miss Ellis, are you educated? My mother was a governess before her marriage, sir. She taught me literature, mathematics, some history. And languages, I speak Hungarian, German, English, and some French. Impressive, he murmured. And your position here at the palace? I'm grateful for it, Your Highness. After my parents died of influenza last year, I had few options. Something like sympathy flickered in his eyes. I have a proposition for you, Miss Ellis. One that would improve your situation considerably. Katarina tensed. She had heard stories of noblemen making propositions to pretty maids. The prince seemed to read her thoughts. Not that kind of proposition, he said sharply. I require a private secretary, someone discreet, intelligent, and not entangled in court politics. Katarina blinked in surprise. A secretary, sir? Yes. Someone to manage my personal correspondence, organize my library, and occasionally translate documents. The position comes with private quarters, a substantial increase in salary, and the freedom to use my personal library for your own education. It sounded too good to be true. Why me, Your Highness? His gaze was direct. Because you saw me at my weakest and chose compassion over opportunity. Because you speak the truth when flattery would be easier. He leaned back in his chair. And because I suspect your mind is wasted changing linens and polishing silver. Katarina's heart raced. Such a position would transform her life, offering security and intellectual stimulation she'd never dared hope for. Yet she couldn't help wondering at the prince's motives. Would I be required to report on others, Your Highness? You mean, would you be a spy? He smiled wryly. No, Miss Ellis. There are plenty of those at court already. I need someone I can trust precisely because you refuse to exploit what you saw. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Then I accept with gratitude, Your Highness. Excellent. He rose, signaling the end of their meeting. You'll move to your new quarters tomorrow. My aide will provide the details. As she stood to leave, he added, one more thing, Miss Ellis. In private, you may speak freely with me. In public, however, we must maintain proper distance. The court thrives on gossip, and I would not wish to make you its subject. I understand, Your Highness. Stefan, he said quietly. When we are alone, you may call me Stefan. The next weeks passed in a blur as Katarina adapted to her new role. Her quarters, while modest, were more luxurious than anything she'd known before, a small sitting room, bedroom, and private bath adjacent to the Crown Prince's offices. Her duties were challenging but engaging, primarily managing Prince Stefan's extensive correspondence and organizing his research for diplomatic missions. She saw him daily, sometimes for hours as they worked through complicated translations or diplomatic protocols. Other days, just briefly as he rushed between meetings with ministers and foreign dignitaries. Always, he treated her with a respect that both pleased and confused her. As the spring ball approached, however, his mood darkened. The official announcement of his betrothal to Princess Magdalena of Bavaria loomed, and with it, the end of whatever small freedoms he had enjoyed. One evening, as Katarina was organizing his correspondence for the following day, Stefan entered the library, loosening his formal cravat with an impatient gesture. Another successful dinner, Your Highness, she inquired, noting his stormy expression. If by successful you mean enduring 3 hours of the Bavarian ambassador's hints about the joyous announcement to come, then yes, spectacularly so. He dropped into a chair by the fire. He brought a miniature portrait of Princess Magdalena. Would you like to see my future bride? He held out a small oval frame. Katarina hesitated, then took it. The portrait showed a young woman with pale blonde hair and a solemn expression. She looks dignified, Katarina offered diplomatically. Stefan laughed without humor. She looks exactly like what she is, a pawn in a political alliance, just as I am. He took the portrait back, studying it with a frown. She is 19. They say she plays the piano beautifully and speaks 4 languages. Beyond that, she is a stranger to me. Perhaps you'll grow to care for each other, Katarina suggested softly. Perhaps. He set the portrait aside. Or perhaps we'll join the ranks of royals who maintain separate households and meet only at state functions. The bitterness in his voice made Katarina's heart ache. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. I'm sorry, Stefan. He looked startled at the contact, then turned his hand to clasp hers briefly. Thank you, Katarina. He released her hand and stood. Enough self-pity for one evening. What urgent matters require my attention tonight? She retrieved several letters from her desk. 2 diplomatic dispatches from Paris, a letter from your mother in Florence, and She hesitated. A personal letter that arrived without official markings. I've placed it on top. He took the stack, his expression curious as he examined the unmarked envelope. Breaking the seal, he unfolded the single sheet of paper. As he read, the color drained from his face. Stefan? What is it? He handed her the letter wordlessly. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. * My dearest Stefan, ***, they tell me you are to marry Princess Magdalena. Perhaps it is for the best. What we shared in Paris was beautiful but ultimately impossible. I have accepted Count von Hermann's proposal, as my father wished. ***, I will always cherish our secret summer. ***, with love and regret. Lily. Katarina looked up, uncertain how to respond. Stefan's expression was carefully blank. An old attachment, she asked gently. Lady Lillian Ashford. I met her in Paris 3 years ago, during my diplomatic training. He took the letter back, folding it precisely. She was the daughter of the British ambassador. Brilliant, beautiful, completely unsuitable for a Habsburg heir. You loved her. I thought I did. He stared into the fire. Or perhaps I loved the freedom she represented, a life chosen, not dictated. He tossed the letter into the flames, watching as it curled and blackened. It doesn't matter now. She's made her choice, as I must make mine. Katarina wanted to comfort him but couldn't find the words. Instead, she returned to her desk and continued sorting correspondence, giving him space with his thoughts. After a long silence, he spoke again. Will you attend the ball, Katarina? She looked up, surprised. The spring ball? No, of course not. It's for nobles and diplomats, not secretaries. You should be there. His voice was quiet but determined. I'd like you to see the grand spectacle you've been helping to prepare. I have no invitation, no gown, no, all easily arranged. He approached her desk. Consider it a reward for your excellent service. Unless you'd rather not attend. The thought of witnessing the glittering event, and of seeing Stefan announce his betrothal to another woman, sent a confusing mix of emotions through her. Yet she couldn't refuse him, not when he looked at her with such intensity. If it pleases your highness, I would be honored to attend. Good. His smile seemed genuine for the first time that evening. I'll make the arrangements. You'll need a gown befitting a lady, not a secretary. Stefan, I can't accept such an extravagance. Consider it on loan from the crown. His tone brooked no argument. Besides, I need one friendly face in the crowd when I surrender my future to the empire's needs. The night of the spring ball arrived with unseasonable warmth, as though spring itself were rushing to match the court's timetable. Katarina stood in her quarters, barely recognizing the woman in the mirror. The gown that had been delivered that morning was a masterpiece of pale blue silk and silver embroidery, modest enough not to cause scandal, yet elegant enough to belong among the aristocracy. A soft knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Crown Prince Stefan, resplendent in his full court regalia, the Habsburg medals gleaming on his chest. Your Highness, she gasped, dropping into a curtsy. You shouldn't be here. I wanted to see if the gown was satisfactory. His eyes widened as he took in her appearance. More than satisfactory, it seems. You look beautiful, Katarina. She blushed at the compliment. Thank you. But the gossips will have plenty to occupy them tonight without noticing my brief visit to the secretary's wing. He offered her a small velvet box. One final touch. Inside lay a delicate silver hairpin set with pale blue sapphires. I can't accept this, she protested. It's from my mother's collection of lesser jewels. Nothing that would raise eyebrows, I assure you. When she still hesitated, he took the pin and carefully secured a loose strand of her dark hair. There. Now you truly look the part of a lady. His fingers brushed her cheek as he withdrew his hand, and Katarina felt a jolt of awareness at the contact. For a moment, they stood too close, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Stefan stepped back first. I must go. I'm expected to open the ball with the ambassador's daughter." His expression grew serious. "Remember, tonight you are Miss Katarina Ellis, distant cousin to the British ambassador's attaché. Your invitation will be waiting at the east entrance." After he left, Katarina touched the hairpin with trembling fingers. She was playing a dangerous game, pretending to be something she was not, harboring feelings for a man so far above her station, a man promised to another. Yet as she made her way to the palace ballroom an hour later, she couldn't summon the will to regret her decision. The ballroom was a vision of crystal and gilt, hundreds of candles reflecting in the massive mirrors that lined the walls. The orchestra played Strauss while elegantly dressed couples whirled across the polished floor. Katarina stood at the periphery, overwhelmed by the spectacle and acutely aware that she didn't belong. "Miss Ellis, isn't it?" She turned to find an elderly gentleman with impressive whiskers watching her with kind eyes. He wore a British military uniform adorned with medals. "Yes, sir," she replied cautiously. "General William Parsons," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "The Crown Prince mentioned you might be feeling adrift in this sea of aristocrats. I thought I might offer the safety of conversation." Relief washed over her. "That's very kind, General." "Not at all. I've always found these events tedious. Too much preening, too little substance." He offered his arm. "Shall we promenade? It's easier to observe the follies of others while in motion." As they circled the ballroom, the general pointed out various dignitaries and shared amusing anecdotes about their foibles. Katarina began to relax, grateful for his grandfatherly companionship. "Ah," the general said suddenly, "it seems the emperor is ready for his announcement." The orchestra fell silent as Emperor Franz Joseph took his position on the dais. Beside him stood Crown Prince Stefan, his expression carefully neutral. On the emperor's other side was a slender blonde woman in a gown of pale gold, Princess Magdalena of Bavaria. "Distinguished guests," the emperor began, his voice carrying through the hushed ballroom. "Tonight we celebrate not only the arrival of spring but a new alliance between the great houses of Habsburg and Wittelsbach. It gives me great pleasure to announce the betrothal of my nephew and heir, Crown Prince Stefan, to Her Serene Highness, Princess Magdalena of Bavaria." Applause erupted as Stefan stepped forward to take the princess's gloved hand. Katarina watched as he bowed over it formally, his face a mask of courtly politeness. Princess Magdalena curtsied in return, her expression equally composed. "They look well matched," General Parsons commented. "Both trapped in duties they never chose." Katarina glanced at him in surprise. "You're very perceptive, General. Old soldiers see more than people credit us for." His eyes twinkled. "Just as secretaries do, I imagine." Before she could respond, the orchestra struck up a waltz. The Crown Prince led Princess Magdalena onto the floor for the traditional first dance, other couples joining them as the music swelled. "Would you care to dance, Miss Ellis?" the general offered. "My knees aren't what they once were, but I can still manage a respectable waltz." Katarina accepted gratefully, and soon they were circling the floor among the glittering couples. From this vantage, she could occasionally glimpse Stefan and his betrothed, moving with practiced grace but no visible warmth. As the waltz ended, the dancers applauded the orchestra. In the momentary shuffle that followed, Katarina found herself separated from the general. She was making her way back to the edge of the ballroom when a hand touched her elbow. "Miss Ellis." She turned to find Crown Prince Stefan beside her, his expression unreadable. "Your Highness," she curtsied deeply. "I see you've met General Parsons." "Yes, he's been most kind. The general is one of the few honest men at court." Stefan's gaze moved to where Princess Magdalena stood surrounded by ladies in waiting. "Would you honor me with the next dance?" Katarina's heart raced. "Is that wise, Your Highness? On this night especially?" "Probably not," he admitted with a faint smile. "But I find I'm in need of genuine conversation after hours of diplomatic platitudes." He led her onto the floor as the orchestra began a lively polka. As they moved through the steps, Katarina was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. "Everyone is watching," she murmured. "Let them." They're wondering who the mysterious beauty in blue might be. His hand at her waist guided her through a turn. None would suspect you were arranging my correspondence just yesterday. Your betrothed is watching as well. His expression tightened. Princess Magdalena understands duty. We had a brief private conversation before the ball. She's as trapped in this arrangement as I am. You spoke with her? What is she like? Intelligent. Reserved. Resigned. His voice softened. She loves a cavalry officer back in Munich. A nobleman but not of sufficient rank for a princess. She asked if I would object to her maintaining separate friendships after our marriage. Katarina nearly missed a step. And will you? How could I? We're both pawns in this game. His eyes met hers with startling intensity. But even pawns sometimes find moments of happiness where they can. The music ended before she could respond. Stefan bowed formally, his public mask back in place. Thank you for the dance, Miss Ellis. As he walked away, Katarina felt the weight of 100 curious stares. She retreated to a small antechamber off the main ballroom, needing a moment to collect herself. The antechamber was blessedly empty, lit only by a few wall sconces. Katarina moved to the window, looking out at the palace gardens illuminated by the full moon. Hiding? She turned to find Princess Magdalena standing in the doorway, her golden gown shimmering in the dim light. Your Serene Highness, Katarina curtsied deeply. Forgive me, I didn't. The princess closed the door behind her. Please, no formalities. Not here. She approached, studying Katarina with clear blue eyes. You're the one who danced with Stefan. The one he watches when he thinks no one notices. Katarina felt the blood drain from her face. Your Highness, I assure you, you needn't explain. Magdalena's smile held no malice. I'm merely curious about the woman who has captured his attention. She moved to stand beside Katarina at the window. He says you're his secretary. Yes, Your Highness. And before that? A palace maid. Magdalena nodded thoughtfully. How interesting. The prince could have chosen anyone for the position, noble sons, university scholars. Yet he chose you. Uncertain how to respond, Katarina remained silent. The princess sighed softly. I don't begrudge Stefan whatever happiness he can find. Our marriage will be a political alliance, nothing more. She turned to face Katarina directly. But be careful. The court destroys those who defy its rules. I would never compromise the Crown Prince's position, Katarina said firmly. It's not his position I'm concerned about. Men, especially princes, are forgiven much. Women rarely enjoy such leniency. Magdalena's expression softened. You seem a good person, Miss Ellis. I would hate to see the court crush that goodness. With that cryptic warning, the princess swept from the room, leaving Katarina shaken. She waited several minutes before returning to the ballroom, where she sought out General Parsons and pleaded a headache to excuse her early departure. As she made her way through the palace corridors toward her quarters, Katarina's mind raced. Princess Magdalena's words echoed in her thoughts, along with the memory of Stefan's intense gaze as they danced. She had been foolish to imagine, even for a moment, that anything beyond professional respect could exist between them. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with a tall figure rounding the corner. Katarina! Stefan caught her arms to steady her. I saw you leave the ball. Is something wrong? She stepped back, putting proper distance between them. I was tired, Your Highness. It's been an eventful evening. He frowned at her formal address. Come walk with me in the small garden. The night is too beautiful to waste indoors. I don't think that would be appropriate, sir. Appropriate? His eyebrows rose. Since when have you concerned yourself with court proprieties? Since your future wife warned me about the dangers of defying them, she replied quietly. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Magdalena spoke with you. When she nodded, he sighed. What did she say? That the court destroys those who break its rules. That women especially pay the price for such transgressions. She's not wrong. Stefan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. But she misunderstands my regard for you. Does she? Katarina's voice was barely audible. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Stefan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. Walk with me, Katarina. Just for a little while. Against her better judgment, she nodded. The small garden was a private retreat adjacent to the royal apartments, rarely used except by family members. Roses climbed the stone walls, their early bloom scenting the night air. A marble fountain burbled quietly at the garden center. They walked in silence for several minutes, the tension between them almost palpable. Finally, Stefan spoke. I never thanked you properly. For what? For seeing me that day in my study. For witnessing my weakness and responding with kindness instead of contempt. It wasn't weakness, she said softly. It was humanity. He stopped by the fountain, watching the play of moonlight on the water. Before you, I'd never met anyone at court who valued humanity over power. I'm not of the court. I'm just the most honest person I've ever known. He turned to face her. Do you know why I really wanted you at the ball tonight? She shook her head. Because I wanted one true thing in that room full of lies. One person who sees me as Stefan, not as a crown. His voice dropped lower. One face I could look for when I felt my courage failing. Katarina's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. Stefan, we can't, I know. The words came out roughly. Believe me, I know. I am to marry Princess Magdalena. The alliance must stand. The empire must continue. He stepped closer. But tonight, for a few moments, I am not the crown prince. I am just a man standing before a woman who has somehow become essential to me. He reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. Katarina closed her eyes at the contact, knowing she should pull away but unable to make herself move. Katarina, he whispered, and she could feel his breath against her lips. The sudden flare of torchlight and the sound of voices shattered the moment. Stefan stepped back swiftly as a palace guard rounded the corner with a lamp. Your Highness, the guard bowed deeply. The Emperor requests your immediate presence in the state room. The Bavarian delegation is preparing to depart. Of course. Stefan's voice was steady, his royal persona firmly back in place. Inform His Majesty I'll be there directly. The guard bowed again and retreated. When he was gone, Stefan turned back to Katarina. I must go. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He took her hand, pressing something small and hard into her palm. Keep this with you. We will speak tomorrow. Then he was gone, striding purposefully back toward the palace. Katarina opened her hand to find a small key of unusual design, its purpose a mystery. Sleep eluded Katarina that night. She lay awake replaying the evening's events, the dance with Stefan, Princess Magdalena's warning, the near kiss in the garden. By dawn, she had reached a painful decision. She could not continue as the Crown Prince's secretary, not with these feelings threatening her judgment and his reputation. She dressed simply in one of her old dresses, leaving the beautiful ball gown carefully laid out on her bed. The sapphire hairpin she placed in a small box with a note of thanks. The mysterious key she kept, tucked into her pocket, unsure what to do with it. The palace was quiet as she made her way to Stefan's office, intending to leave her resignation letter on his desk before he arrived. To her surprise, a light burned beneath his door despite the early hour. She knocked softly. Enter. Stefan sat at his desk, still in his evening clothes, looking as though he hadn't slept. Papers were scattered across the surface, and an open bottle of brandy stood beside an empty glass. Katarina! He straightened, his expression brightening momentarily before he noticed her attire. What's wrong? She placed the envelope on his desk. My resignation, Your Highness. Effective immediately. Resignation. He stared at the envelope as if it might bite him. Why? You know why. Her voice was steady despite the ache in her chest. Last night made it clear that my position here has become untenable. He rose abruptly, circling the desk to stand before her. Because of what almost happened in the garden. Because of what's happening between us, she corrected gently. Something that cannot be, for both our sakes. So you'll just leave? Anger flashed in his eyes. Without discussion, without allowing things to progress to a point where real damage might be done, she finished. Yes. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. And where will you go? What will you do? I have some savings. I'll find a position, perhaps as a governess or companion. And that will make you happy. There was a challenge in his voice. Teaching some nobleman spoiled children, or reading to some elderly countess. Happiness is not always possible, Your Highness. Sometimes we must settle for peace. She met his gaze steadily. You taught me that. He flinched as though she'd struck him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Stefan reached for the envelope, his movements deliberate. He broke the seal and read the contents, his expression hardening with each line. Very well, he said coldly, setting the letter down. If this is your choice, I won't force you to stay. Relief and despair warred within her. Thank you for understanding. I don't understand, he snapped. I don't understand how you can walk away so easily from, he stopped, visibly collecting himself. From your position here. There is nothing easy about this decision, Stefan. Her voice caught on his name. But it's the right one. He turned away, staring out the window at the lightening sky. When will you go? Today, if possible. So soon? He sounded genuinely startled. A clean break is best, I think. She stepped toward the door, unable to bear the tension between them any longer. I'll collect my things and be gone by noon. As she reached for the door handle, his voice stopped her. The key? Did you bring it? She hesitated, then withdrew it from her pocket. Yes. What is it for? It opens a cabinet in my private apartments. The one behind the blue tapestry in the sitting room. He still didn't look at her. Inside you'll find a journal bound in red leather. Take it with you when you go. Confused, she asked, what does it contain? Now he turned, his expression unreadable. My private thoughts over the past month. Things I couldn't say aloud, even to you. A bitter smile touched his lips. Consider it a parting gift, the truth behind the crown you've served. Katarina clutched the key tightly. I don't know if I should, please. The word seemed forced from him. I want you to have it. To understand. She nodded slowly. Very well. Thank you, Your Highness. Katarina. Her name was almost a whisper. In another life? She waited, but he didn't finish the thought. Goodbye, Stefan. She curtsied one final time and slipped from the room. The journal burned in Katarina's hands as she sat in her small rented room later that day. She had left the palace as planned, finding temporary lodging in a respectable boarding house near the university district. The landlady, a widow named Mrs. Weber, had accepted her story of leaving palace service to pursue further education without question. Now, as evening shadows lengthened across the faded carpet, Katarina turned the red leather journal over and over, unsure whether to open it. To read Stefan's private thoughts seemed an invasion, yet he had insisted she take it. Finally, drawing a deep breath, she opened the cover. The first entry was dated the day after their first meeting, the day he had found her in his study. April the 15th, 1887 ***. Today I offered a position to the maid who found me weeping like a child. Katarina Ellis. An unusual name for an unusual woman. I told myself it was her discretion that prompted my decision, but there was something in her eyes when she spoke of empires and resentment, an intelligence and compassion rarely seen at court. Uncle is pressing forward with the Bavarian alliance. Princess Magdalena arrives in 3 weeks for the formal introduction. I am told she is accomplished and beautiful. I am told I should be grateful for such an advantageous match. I am told many things by people who have never had to sacrifice their hearts for politics. Katarina turned the pages slowly, reading entries that chronicled their daily interactions, diplomatic crises, and Stefan's growing dread of his impending betrothal. Then she reached an entry from just a week earlier, May the 10th, 1887 I can no longer deny what I have felt for weeks. I am falling in love with Katarina. The realization should horrify me. She is my secretary, a commoner, entirely unsuitable for a Habsburg heir. Instead, I feel only clarity. She is the most genuine person I have ever known. When I am with her, the weight of the crown lifts, if only for moments. But what can come of these feelings? I am promised to Princess Magdalena. The alliance must stand. The empire requires it. To break the betrothal would risk war, or at minimum, dangerous political instability. I cannot place my happiness above the welfare of millions. So I will do my duty. I will marry Magdalena. I will be emperor one day. And I will carry the memory of what might have been with Katarina like a secret wound until my dying day. Tears blurred Katarina's vision. She wiped them away impatiently and continued reading. The final entry was dated that very morning, May the 17th, 1887 She is leaving. Katarina has resigned, and I cannot blame her. Last night in the garden, I nearly ruined everything, her reputation, my betrothal, perhaps even the alliance. Selfishness nearly overcame duty. Yet even now, knowing the impossibility of it all, I cannot regret what I feel for her. In a short time, she has changed me irrevocably. She has shown me that the mask I wear need not become my face, that the crown need not crush the man beneath it. I am giving her this journal. Perhaps it is cowardice, saying in writing what I cannot say aloud. Or perhaps it is hope, that someday, somehow, she will understand that what passes between us is not mere infatuation but something rarer and more precious. There is a solution. I have been considering it for days, turning it over in my mind, searching for flaws in its design. It would require courage from both of us, and no small amount of risk. But if she reads these words and feels even a fraction of what I feel, perhaps she will return to the palace one last time. Katarina, if you are reading this, meet me at midnight in the small garden where we parted. Come alone and tell no one. There is another path before us, if you are willing to walk it. Katarina closed the journal, her heart pounding. The clock on her bedside table showed 10:30. If she left now, she could reach the palace by midnight. But what was this other path Stefan mentioned? What solution could possibly allow them to be together without sacrificing his duty to the empire? She paced the small room, torn between hope and fear. To return to the palace, to meet him in secret, it was dangerous, perhaps foolish. Yet the thought of not going, of never knowing what might have been, was unbearable. At 11, she made her decision. She changed into her best dress, pinned her hair neatly, and slipped from the boarding house, leaving a note for Mrs. Weber claiming a family emergency. The night was cool and clear as Katarina made her way through Vienna's streets toward the palace. She knew the small servants' gate at the eastern wall would be her best entrance. The guards there knew her and might allow her through without question. To her relief, the gate was manned by a young guard who had often exchanged pleasantries with her during her time at the palace. Miss Ellis. He seemed surprised to see her. I heard you'd left service. I did, she confirmed. But I forgot something important. May I enter just for a short while? He hesitated, then nodded. The East Wing is quiet tonight. The Crown Prince is meeting with ministers in the West Study. He winked. Take your time finding your something important. Katarina thanked him and hurried through the gate, making her way through the shadowy grounds toward the small garden. Her pulse quickened as she approached the arched entrance, wondering if Stefan would already be waiting. The garden was empty, the fountain's gentle splashing the only sound disturbing the night. Katarina checked the small ornamental clock set into the garden wall, 5 minutes to midnight. She had arrived early. She settled on a stone bench to wait, clutching the journal in her hands. As the minutes passed, doubt began to creep in. Had she misunderstood? Was this a test of her discretion, one she was failing by coming here? The palace clock struck midnight, its deep tones resonating through the garden. Still, Stefan did not appear. 5 minutes passed. 10. Katarina rose, preparing to leave, when she heard footsteps approaching rapidly from the palace entrance. Stefan appeared beneath the arch, slightly out of breath. He wore riding clothes rather than his usual formal attire, and his hair was disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Katarina! Relief filled his voice. You came. Your journal, she said softly. I read it. He approached slowly, stopping an arm's length away. All of it? Yes. She held his gaze steadily. You spoke of another path, a solution. What did you mean? Instead of answering directly, he reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. This arrived by special courier this afternoon. From my mother in Florence. Confused, Katarina accepted the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing an elegant feminine hand, my dearest Stefan, I have given much thought to your letter and the difficult position in which you find yourself. Your father and I faced similar opposition to our union, though admittedly under different circumstances. The villa in Tuscany is prepared, as you requested. Alessandro has spoken with his contacts in the diplomatic corps. The position in Washington is secured, pending your final decision. Remember what I told you when you were a boy, a crown is merely metal, but a heart is irreplaceable. Choose wisely, my son. With all my love. Mother. Katarina looked up, puzzled. I don't understand. Stefan took both her hands in his. I'm offering you a choice, Katarina. A difficult one. What choice? To come with me. Tonight. His voice was low, intense. To leave Vienna, the palace, all of it behind. She stared at him in shock. Leave? But your position, the betrothal, I have a younger cousin, Victor. He is Habsburg through and through, educated in diplomacy, eager for responsibility. The emperor already treats him as a second heir. Stefan's grip tightened on her hands. If I were to renounce my claim to the succession, Victor would step forward. Renounce your claim. The magnitude of what he was suggesting overwhelmed her. You would give up the throne? For me? For us, he corrected. And for myself. I've spent my life preparing for a role I never chose. I've watched my uncle sacrifice everything, love, family, joy, for an empire that demands all and returns little. His blue eyes blazed with conviction. I don't want that life. What life do you want? She whispered. One of purpose but also of choice. My mother has secured a diplomatic position for me in Washington, far from European politics, where my Habsburg connections would be an asset rather than a burden. A smile touched his lips. A place where a diplomat might marry whom he chooses without causing an international incident. Katarina's mind raced. The Bavarian alliance can still stand. Princess Magdalena could marry Victor instead. The treaties would remain intact, the balance of power undisturbed. He released her hands to pace the garden path. I've thought of everything, Katarina. The political ramifications, the practical considerations. It can work. The emperor would never forgive you. Perhaps not. Stefan's expression sobered. But he would accept it, eventually. He values stability above all else. Once he sees that the transition to Victor causes no disruption, his anger will fade. And Princess Magdalena would likely be relieved. He stopped pacing to face her. When we spoke privately before the ball, she confessed her love for another. Our marriage would make 3 people miserable instead of 1. Katarina sank onto the stone bench, overwhelmed. This is too much to comprehend. I know. He knelt before her, taking her hands again. And I'm asking you to decide tonight, which isn't fair. But we have little time. By morning, the palace will be awake, and our chance will be gone. Where would we go? First to Florence, to my mother's villa. From there to Naples, where we would take a ship to America. His eyes searched hers. It would not be an easy journey. There would be scandal, gossip. We would have to build a new life far from everything familiar. The enormity of his proposal struck her full force. To leave everything behind, her home, her country, her identity as a Habsburg subject. To bind her fate to his, for better or worse. Why, she asked simply. Why would you sacrifice so much? We barely know each other. Don't we? His voice was gentle. In 2 months, you've seen me at my weakest and my strongest. You've challenged my thinking, broadened my perspective. You've shown me a way to be both a prince and a man. He touched her cheek softly. I know your courage, your intelligence, your compassion. I know how your eyes light up when you discover something new in a book. I know the sound of your laughter when you forget court propriety. Tears filled her eyes. But love? Is that what this is? It's the beginning of love, he said honestly. The foundation for something that could grow stronger with time if we're brave enough to nurture it. He smiled ruefully. I'm not offering a fairy tale, Katarina. I'm offering a chance, for both of us, at a life of our own making. She looked into his eyes, seeing not the crown prince but the man, passionate, determined, vulnerable. A man willing to risk everything for the possibility of happiness. When would we leave? Her voice was barely audible. Hope blazed in his expression. Tonight. Now. A carriage is waiting at the east gate. We would travel south immediately, staying ahead of any pursuit. So quickly. It must be. Once I'm missed, questions will be asked. He squeezed her hands. But only if you're certain, Katarina. I won't take you from your home against your better judgment. She closed her eyes, searching her heart. The path before her was fraught with uncertainty, yet the alternative, returning to her lonely room, knowing what might have been, seemed suddenly unbearable. Yes, she whispered, opening her eyes. Yes, I'll go with you. Joy transformed his face. He pulled her to her feet and into his arms. Are you certain? No, she admitted with a tremulous laugh. I'm terrified. But I want this chance, with you, the more than I've wanted anything. Stefan cupped her face in his hands, his touch reverent. Katarina Ellis, he murmured, you have saved me in more ways than you know. Then he kissed her, gently at first, then with growing passion. Katarina yielded to the embrace, her arms twining around his neck, her heart soaring despite the dangers ahead. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Stefan pressed his forehead to hers. We must hurry. There's little time. Hand in hand, they slipped from the garden and through the shadowy palace grounds toward the east gate. The same young guard stood watch, his eyes widening at the sight of the crown prince in riding clothes, holding the hand of a former palace secretary. Your Highness, he stammered, bowing deeply. Rise, Joseph, Stefan said quietly. What you see tonight, you did not see. Do you understand? The guard hesitated only briefly before nodding. I understand, sir. I saw nothing. Good man. Stefan pressed a small purse into the guard's hand. For your loyalty. Beyond the gate, a plain carriage waited, its driver a stranger with a weathered face who merely nodded as they approached. All is ready, Your Highness, he said in a thick Italian accent. The road to Graz is clear. Stefan helped Katarina into the carriage, then paused to look back at the palace, the only home he had known, the legacy he was leaving behind. For a moment, doubt clouded his expression. Katarina reached for his hand. "We can still turn back," she said softly. "No one need ever know we considered this." He looked at her, and the doubt vanished. "No," he said firmly. "This is the path I choose." He climbed in beside her, and the carriage lurched forward into the night. As they passed through Vienna's sleeping streets, Katarina leaned against Stefan's shoulder, both exhilarated and terrified by the journey before them. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Stefan's arm tightened around her. "Now we write our own story," he said. "One where duty and desire need not be enemies. One where a crown prince and a palace maid can build a life worthy of them both." As the carriage carried them south toward a future neither could fully imagine, Katarina thought of the moment that had changed everything, a glimpse of tears on a proud face, a moment of shared humanity in a world of rigid protocol. Whatever lay ahead, she knew with sudden certainty that they would face it together, no longer prince and servant but partners in a bold new adventure of their own making. The first light of dawn was breaking over the distant mountains as Katarina drifted to sleep against Stefan's shoulder, his fingers gently stroking her hair, his voice murmuring promises of the life they would build together, far from palace walls but richer by far than any royal treasury.